The sign is still up on the...
There we
Thank
go.
you.
Perfect.
I would like to call to order the Monday, June 17th meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Alder Bernstein.
Here.
Alder DePool is excused. Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the June 3rd meeting?
I'll move, or I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay. Are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Do we have any appearances other than? Okay, I do have a proclamation to read under appearances. Otherwise, we don't have any other ones, so. Proclamation, whereas the Emancipation Proclamation signed by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, did not end slavery for all in our nation. It would take 2 more years with the end of the Civil War for Union Army troops to march into Galveston, Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation and free the 250,000 people who remained enslaved. It is in remembrance of this day that we now celebrate June 19th as Juneteenth. And whereas, while Juneteenth has long been a regional holiday celebrated in the American South with parades, picnics, family gatherings, and prayer, excuse me, it took on a more national and symbolic prominence in 2020 following nationwide protests over the killing of George Floyd. And whereas in 2021, President Joe Biden signed into law the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, and Juneteenth became a federal holiday to recognize the emancipation of enslaved African Americans and to acknowledge the enduring struggle for freedom and equality in the United States. And whereas today's Juneteenth events continue to celebrate Black American culture, history, art, and achievement, and recognize the triumph of the human spirit over slavery. Now therefore, I, Mary O'Connor, Mayor of Monona, Wisconsin, in collaboration with the Monona City Council, do hereby declare June 19th, 2024 as Juneteenth in the city of Monona. I call on residents to join with me in commemorating the centuries of struggle faced by Black Americans, celebrating their power and resilience, and renewing our commitment to promote racial healing and end systemic inequity wherever it exists. Signed in the city of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, the 17th day of June, 2024, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor. So that'll be coming up on Wednesday. Moving on, there is no public hearing. We have a couple items under the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve those?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Under item G1A, unfinished business, consideration of resolution 24-6-2411, approval of a 3-year public school resource officer agreement between the city of Monona, the Monona Grove School District, and the village of Cottage Grove, and this is put forth by the police chief. Is there a motion to approve this?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, chief, and I understand this was approved by the school board at their last meeting, is that?
This was approved unanimously by the school board with no changes.
Okay, great.
It's good to know.
So did you have anything further to say? I know you explained it pretty well.
So my counterpart, Chief Gary, and I presented, well, really didn't present, we were there for questions, and I will tell you, I'm comfortable saying that the school board had expressed their pleasure with how things are going, and asked for that continued operation of the school resource officer as it has been the last few years.
That's great, because I know several of them had reservations initially, so.
One of the members who expressed significant concerns, and I believe voted no. When this last came up, hello, was actually the one who recommended approval and made the motion, so.
Great. Any questions for the chief? Okay, well, all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, chief.
Moving on, Item 2A, we have a couple things that are started for immediate approval. 2A, consideration of 2024-2025 Class B fermented malt beverage and Class C wine licenses for David's Jamaican Cuisine, 1006 East Broadway, put forth by the License Review Committee. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Oh, so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Doug, before we vote, do you want to just explain why we're taking it out of order? Or I assume there's a timing issue.
Well, the license year starts July 1,
Okay.
and we won't meet before then, so.
Okay, all in favor of taking it out of order, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve?
Second. Second.
Doug, did you have anything to explain? They've moved, right? Or back into Monona?
Yes, they're moving back into Monona, 1006 East Broadway, where the car wash is.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Blake is here if anybody has any questions. This is basically a beer and wine license, so it's not a full liquor license.
So any questions for Alderwood or for Neil? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
You all have a beautiful evening now.
You do.
Painless, yeah.
Yes, I've seen it now. Yes, sir. Yes, man, thanks.
Next, item B, also starred for immediate approval, consideration of resolution 24-6-2716, a resolution to purchase the power cot and lift system put forth by the fire chief. I guess before we make the motion, is there an explanation of why we're taking this out of order?
Mm-hmm.
Just from the ordering standpoint, because of the length of time for ordering, it's a 4-month lead time.
Okay. And this is something we already approved in the capital budgets.
Okay.
I'll move that we suspend the rules and take it out of order.
I'll second.
Any further, well, I guess all in favor say aye to that.
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the
So moved.
resolution?
Second.
Brian moved. Your second. Any questions for the chief?
Happy to come up and answer questions if you have any.
Guess not. We probably discussed it a lot at capital budget,
Yeah.
And it's under budget.
and it's under
And it's
budget,
under budget.
right. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Moore,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Rahmacher,
Aye.
Alder Bernstein,
Aye.
Alder Holquist.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, also starred, consideration of resolution 24-6-2713, approval of a certified survey map, CSM, for Lot 1 of CSM 2681 and unplatted lands, Owen Road GDP, put forth by the Plan Commission. Can you, Doug, can you tell us why this is starred? I think we've already approved this once, haven't we, or?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. This was approved back in 2022. By state statute, the certified survey map must be recorded within 12 months. That was not done, but the plans, sort of the design of what's being put forward is very, very similar to what was done then, and very few comments throughout the review process.
Okay. So is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
I guess that didn't really explain why are we taking about order because of the timing with the Sundays?
Time sensitivity as well, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there a motion to approve it?
Move to approve?
Is there a second? Okay, do you want to explain a little bit about the,
Yes, absolutely. So this is a certified survey map for the Owen Road development, the Slindy project over by the bowling alley. The proposal here would combine 4 lots at the site between 112 and 208 Owen Road. The certified survey map would align with the general development plan, GDP, as well as the PIP that is coming forward actually this time next week at Plan Commission. So this would allow for 2 different buildings to be built. Both proposed, as proposed right now, would be multifamily buildings. There would be a private connector street between them as well that would have surface parking. And so you can see that, given sort of the related nature of the 2 buildings, you can see some of the easements that are proposed on the certified survey map that would allow for travel across those, but also stormwater features and things like that. So as mentioned, this was approved by City Council back in May of 2022. A couple of the easements have changed, but the dimensions and things put forward have not changed at all. And so that was not recorded. It needed to be sort of go back through the approval process. Went through the Plan Commission on May 30th as well as June 10th, where it was recommended for approval to City Council. It did not need to go back to Public Works Committee because the sort of northern section closest to the right-of-way did nothing change there. So
Okay.
their unanimous recommendation from 2022 holds. And I believe that we have Brian Arkand on the phone as well, who's the applicant's engineer who worked on this as well.
Does anyone have any questions?
Just so
Rick?
I'm clear, this is for lot 1 and 2, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, it doesn't have to be stated in the resolution, it's enough to say just lot 1?
So the lot 1 as the resolution is because that was already part of a certified survey map. So there's a couple that were unplatted. So this would be a new lot 1, new lot 2.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Is that-
Anything,
I did that. Because-
Doug?
Is that unusual to have unplatted land in the city?
It's,
Not here.
I think it's quite possibly the first time I've seen it. But doesn't mean that it's not somewhere else.
Right. That is
It's funny.
mostly just curiosity
Yeah.
on that. And then I note there will still, have the easements already been drafted and reviewed by the city attorney?
They would still be reviewed, so still to be reviewed. So typically with this, I will then work with the city attorney. The certified survey map will need city signatures prior to recording, so that's sort of the
Yeah.
last step in the process.
Okay.
Anything else, Teresa?
Yeah, Doug, can you refresh my memory about TID districts and whether any are affected by this, or whether this is part of a TID district?
This is part of a future proposed district that
Mhm.
will actually be coming to City Council next month.
Mhm.
But the boundaries of this do not change. It's really, for those purposes, it's sort of 4 lots going into 2. But the boundaries of the district would not be altered by this.
Right, I guess that's a different topic, but yeah. While I had you here, I thought I would just ask, thanks.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on, we have one additional CSM also starred. Consideration of Resolution 24-6-2715, approval of a certified survey map, CSM, to revise the western property boundary of Lot 1 of CSM 1074 to 1350 F1350 Femri Drive. I guess that's what that means. Put forth by the Plan Commission. Is there a motion to take this out of order? I guess, well, do you want to explain, is this also, this is also a Slendy property, right? The Executive
That's correct.
Storage Building.
The same ownership group, this has already been, the use has already been approved, so timing is definitely, this is sort of the last element of the approvals that would be needed. And again, just no comments that were received, so the request was put forward to Starlight.
Is there a motion to take this out of order?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve?
Move approval?
I'll second.
Okay. Doug, do you want to?
Yes, thank you. This is kind of an interesting request. This is to modify the existing property boundaries at 1350 Femright Drive. So this is the vacant parcel just north of the Merida Clinic, sort of at the intersection there of Femright and Copse. There is an approved zoning permit for this for a 4-story climate-controlled storage building. That came through, Plan Commission was approved at their May 13th meeting. One of the conditions there was that this certified survey map come through. The map is included in the packet for the City Council, shows the previous property boundary actually extended to the center line of Copse, and there was a subsequent 40-foot roadway easement that was granted. This would really clean that up, move the boundary 40 feet back to the east, sort of away from the roadway, and dedicate that back to the city as public right-of-way instead of having that easement there. So it's really, as this development is taking place, the request has come forward to kind of clean things up a little bit. Again, there is a condition that to work with City Attorney Cole on the dedication of that right-of-way. And this did go through Public Works Committee in terms of any concerns both with the certified survey map but also the roadway and sort of that dedication. No comments were raised, no concerns, and that was unanimously recommended for approval. And so this came through Planning Commission May 13th and May 30th. Again, no comments, and was recommended with the 3 conditions as included in the memo.
Okay. Questions, anyone? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. I think we're going to skip E for now, thank you, Doug, and move on to F, so the folks from Bray can go home. We have 2 different items. First of all is consideration of Resolution 24-6-2717, authorization to proceed with further evaluation of the preferred design concept for the Civic Campus Public Safety Building put forth by the Ad hoc Public Safety Building Committee. I guess basically the committee, I think we told you earlier, have focused on kind of 2 different designs, one of which involved moving the well and one of which doesn't. They met again last week and made a recommendation as to which design we should work on going forward. So, Neil, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think
say
just
about
in terms of actually asking, allowing these 2 gentlemen to focus a little bit and kind of spend their energy on one preferred option was kind of the direction of the committee. Certainly will be related to the other item we'll be discussing after this item, but with that, we've essentially, committee essentially is recommending the version where we have relocated the well and proceeding with a design that utilizes that space on the site. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ray.
You are relocating. The well
Right,
is
it would-
being
It would
relocated.
involve
Okay.
It would,
thank
yeah,
you.
it would still require some approvals and things
Got it.
to do
Sure.
that, Alder, but right now we're proceeding with that. That would be the
Got it.
preferred
Doesn't-
method, yeah.
Microphone is a little.
Basically makes it much more functional and,
Absolutely.
yeah, so. Were you going to put something up on the screen or share something?
We sure can. I believe you have it in your packet as well this evening, kind of the presentation that we reviewed with
That'd
that
be good to
previously.
see.
Have
So
it here, yep, let me see if I can track it down.
Might be a little
here.
easier to see, it's kind
Agreed.
of compressed in the
Agreed.
Here we
packet.
go, hold on.
And if you 2 would like to introduce yourselves.
yes, Matt Wolfert with Bray Architects. Good to see everybody again.
Oh,
Share.
yeah.
Get to share.
And Paul Bestel with Ray Architects.
Share screen here.
Thanks, Doug.
Try not to drive people crazy with the mic noises.
Yeah, it's,
While Neil's pulling that up, just a little background. Obviously, you've been, as a council, up to speed generally on where things have been heading. The last year has been a lot of needs identification, needs verification, concept development, both from a site plan, floor plan, and also exterior perspective. And so you're seeing a lot of that exterior work for the first time this evening. It is very important to note that these are not final. There's still a lot of work to do to nail down the site plan, the phasing, the stormwater. You can imagine all the complexities that come with the detailed development of these plans. But it's a bit of the cart and the horse. We always want to get all the details in place, but until we as a council and as a city are comfortable to commit to moving forward and expending the dollars to design and engineer, there's always a little bit of these are concepts and not final plans. That goes to the breakdown and makeup of the different spaces as well. We don't have final program yet in terms of how much is city admin versus police versus fire and EMS versus shared. That is still to be flushed out a little bit further, and I think Neil could comment a little more on that if he'd like to, but big picture, we are potentially a little bit light on admin and police in terms of future proofing, looking 30 to 50 years out. We may be a little heavy on fire, so part of the game over the next couple months is going to be, assuming council agrees with us proceeding with a singular option, is to use that the next couple months to be refining the space needs, looking to the future, and continuing to look for ways to be as judicious as we can with reducing. In general, square footage is the equivalent of increasing cost at this level of development. And so the more we can balance the needs for today and the future with the concerns regarding budget, which there always are, that's going to be a key consideration that we have at this level many, many times, I have a feeling, in the next few months. We are going to try to do that in the next few months with our work with the ad hoc committee and with the direct users. So just want to make sure everybody realizes that what you're seeing is not final and there's still a lot of work to do. But it's the starting point, we hope, once we narrow to an option, to allow us to really start getting into the weeds and into the detail in the next couple months.
Is anyone else distracted by the microphones?
It is.
I'm having a hard time focusing on the meetings because the sound is distracting. Is there something that we can say? The microphone is so loud
Yeah,
that
no,
the echo is
it's
everywhere. Yeah, just.
I don't know if you can hear me still if we do this.
Is that better?
I can.
It's better, but-
I think it's
Yeah.
fine in here as long as you can hear it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, why
that,
don't we
yeah.
do that?
Testing. Yes, just still, just don't get right up on the microphones, yeah.
Yeah, hold it back.
Oh.
maybe a little bit.
Rewired it, and so when I came out there, I just had to reset.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I agree, that was not fun.
That's very loud.
If I would, I'll ask Paul to walk you briefly through the site plan
No problem.
site plans, floor plans, imagery. We're gonna move a little bit quickly, but not because we're trying to speed. So if you guys want us
Sure.
to pause at any point, please just throw your hand up, interrupt. We're happy to stop, or obviously go back after we get done.
And thank you all for allowing us to push up this item so that we can get home earlier. Really appreciate that, Mayor. Thank you. So where we are now, so over the past couple of months, we've studied several strategies to fit that program that we had talked about previously onto the site. Really high level, trying to figure out what layout of those spaces utilize the site best, utilize the existing building best. We looked at potentially removing the building and using a clean site. We looked at putting the fire department on the east side as opposed to the west side, and the west side as opposed to the east side. So we looked at this many different ways, and what CPT brought to you the last time we met were the two strongest options. One that had the infrastructure still on the site in case we had to work around the plumbing, the water pump and the water reservoir. And then one where we basically kept the existing building but removed that infrastructure.
Meaning the well.
Meaning the
Right.
well, thank you. Which is going to be finding its end of life fairly soon. So the discussion led to, well, if we can clear the site based on some study that was done already through Public Works, this would be a really good opportunity to utilize the existing building, saving some money that way, we hope, as well as being able to get a little bit more of a green site.
Again, maybe this is what the mayor was referring to. When you say utilize the existing building, you're referring to the
City Hall.
well, or you're referring to, okay, City Hall.
The current.
Generally, City Hall police
Okay,
losing the fire garage.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. I would say other than the fire garage, we're utilizing the existing structure, and there would be heavy renovation on that structure. But the additional square footage would be branching off of what is currently the building that was built between the 40s and today. Thank you for the clarification. So what I bring this to you today because I wanted to identify that these are the two strongest options we feel as design professionals, as well as the central planning team, to bring to your attention. And then we discussed the two layouts in a way that allowed us to pick the winner. By far, we would say that option one here is the best option. It utilizes the slope of the site in a way that is a benefit to the way the building works as opposed to a hindrance. It has a much more compact footprint. It allowed us to put all of the departments closer to each other, so there's a lot less wasted space in circulation. Neil, if you would go to option two, you can see.
So we have option 2. I'm trying to see exactly how far down we got that one. Oh,
Yeah,
there it is.
it's
Hold on,
there.
there we go.
Thank you.
The raise.
So you can see in option 2, the footprint of the building creates this sort of C-shaped courtyard in order to get around the existing well and existing reservoir. Essentially, the amount of circulation to get from one side of the building to the other is 3 times the footsteps to get from the entrance to
Circulation, meaning
the
people
fire.
walking around. Got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Corridors and
Sure.
essentially just space you need, but In this way, it's sort of like the quote-unquote wasted space.
Yeah,
And there's just more of that in this layout.
yeah, there is.
You can also see that the building itself does not feel like a single coherent building. It feels like three buildings. And as we were looking at the way it sat on the site through perspectives, you could see that it even looks like three separate buildings. And even though we looked at it a couple of ways to architecturally improve the way that the building looks, to make it look like it is one architectural language, the massing of the building just did not allow us to make it look like one single building. It's definitely a fire building and a police building and a civic center. Whereas in option one, the building feels as one cohesive whole.
And we get more parking, by the way.
And more
Yeah, the
parking.
parking was a consideration, not a driver, so I think that was the other advantage of option one. We didn't prioritize parking.
Just happened to be.
But when we
Yeah.
got to this option, it really did allow for maximization
Sure.
of this utilization of the site with parking.
Staff
One of the
noticed
biggest
that one
factors.
right away.
You can see where their priorities are lying.
Yeah.
Are the costs similar for 1 and 2?
We have not, and actually the next agenda item, I believe, is going to be discussing the construction manager. We did high-level budgeting, and in range form, they were similar. But this option, if we take the well relocation out of it, I will acknowledge that. We didn't factor into this because that's a public works conversation. And politically, we were also concerned that if we went with option 2, we built around the well and the reservoir, and then 5 years from now, the well and reservoir are gone anyway. And now we've got this really odd-shaped building that utilized the site kind of strange. Aligning these two does seem to make the most sense looking out decades into the future. From a budget perspective, they are similar though, and I think the advantage of option 1 is that you're going to get more for the investment because we're building less circulation and more functional, usable square footage.
You want to go to the
Should we go back to
space use or?
Yeah, if we want to go into the space use.
Okay.
So on option 1, green would be the civic program. So that would be your city hall, that would be your city administration. Blue is police and red is fire. Yellow are shared spaces. So you can see that the training room that the fire and police will be using on the far right side is equidistant from fire and police. On the left side, that shared space that you see is the weight room that is to be utilized by fire, police, as well as city employees. So this layout allows us to give everyone their own space, but also be as efficient as possible in having them access those shared spaces as well. Now, as we talked about before, we have a lot more planning and design to go through. But what we think about this option here is that it gives us more opportunity to use the envelope of the building, the footprint of the building, in a way that allows us to right-size those 3 programs and keep the footprint. Whereas in option 2, because of the way that each of those buildings kind of had its own wing, there is no easy, simple way to be able to add to one and without changing the footprint of the building. So this one would have, as we move forward, a more consistent design and a more consistent footprint. Whereas option 2, if we change the program drastically, adding a few thousand square foot here and taking away from it a few thousand square foot here, the building could radically look different. So option 1 allows us a lot more flexibility as we move forward to right-size the programs than option 2 does.
Now, the designs on the right, that's the upper level, right?
Yeah,
And the
thank
left
you.
is where you come in the back of the building? Is that
Moving
right?
clockwise from the upper left-hand corner, you've got the first floor. You enter through the planned north side of the building there. The idea behind this is that you enter into a double-height atrium space that utilizes the slope of the site in order to allow you to enter into the space, go up or stay on the same level as you need. But it's not an atrium for atrium's sake. It is basically, we are entering on the first level, a lot of programs on the second level, and it allows us to have this grand entrance that is informed by the fact that you are building on the bottom of a hill as well as the top of the hill.
So the grand entrance would be lower down the hill and the...
Basically across from the community center.
Yeah.
Yeah, more community center elevation, not exactly, but more similar to that elevation.
So kind of like ground level, like
Yeah.
parking lot level, yeah.
And then once
Okay.
you enter the space, all three of the departments have their reception areas being able to be from the same lobby space.
Mm.
On option 2, all three of those reception areas are separate from each other. So there was discussion as if we went with option 2, we may have to have more full-time employees watching each of those access points into the building and into those office suites.
Mhm.
Whereas we have the potential here for having one employee being able to watch all three entrances
Mhm.
essentially. So that gives us a lot more flexibility for staffing down the line as well.
Very nice.
Alder Moore?
Yeah, obviously it's up to the full council, but my own sense would be, let's concentrate on option number 1 and not be jumping back and forth because A, it just lengthens the presentation, and B, I mean, I think everybody in the room can agree that if the pump life is only 5 years, it would make 0 sense to hang on to it.
You did a wonderful job summarizing our presentation.
We did want you to see somewhat of what
Sure.
this looks like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And there would be, on the first floor, there's also a council, what would be a council meeting room, which we could use for other things as well. And the first floor could be locked off from the remainder of the building, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity to the eventual detailed design of where do community members have access, where don't they? How are we providing a safe, secure environment for our employees and staff, but also providing a warm, welcoming environment for our community members who are going to be coming into the building for a variety of purposes. And so we think this has the real makings of that. Hopefully the renderings you're seeing, the balance between classy, airy, light, modern, but not so super modern that it doesn't feel like Monona and doesn't feel like in 20 years you're going to go say, oh, I know that building was designed in 2025 because it had this such specificity of architecture. And again, this will change a lot as engineers get involved and budget gets developed, but I think it was important, we felt it was important for you to get a sense aesthetically of the difference that this building has in terms of how it holds the street edge and how it really prioritizes transparency, but balancing that with safety for those occupants as well.
I also like how the front door sort of points toward the other parts of the campus. As now, the entry to the city hall just sort of feels so disjointed from the entry of the community center or the library.
Yeah, we felt that's a great observation as well, just thinking these two
They're all
buildings, now a
looking at each other,
library
right.
and the heart of city government are really kind of talking to each other across the street.
Exactly.
If the community center stays there in the next 50 years, great,
Yeah.
right, it's there. If it doesn't, that's a different conversation.
Yeah. Did you have more to?
If you have questions on the renderings that were included or the other options, we're happy to address them.
We just wanted to get a good idea, and this will be on the agenda again next time, right? But the main thing is to get authorization to proceed with option 1. I think is what we're looking for, so.
And to be clear, that's really for purposes of getting good solid cost estimates, which is obviously tied into our next item as well. But by being able to focus on that particular one, there will be some adjustments made to the space use distribution that you saw there. Again, based on the fact I think admin does not have any room to grow, PD does not really have any room to grow right now. Fire has done a good job of identifying that. We might need to squeeze some things in here to kind of make sure we have each department has their own ability, a little bit of flexibility to make that work. So by having the other individual, in addition to working with Bray, the construction manager, to help us kind of refine that, we'll be able to evaluate on not only a square footage basis, but on a very real cost basis too. The general area estimate has gotten us this far, which is great. But I think if we really are in a situation where we really need to know more specific costs, we'll certainly talk about that with the next item.
So anybody have other questions about this one?
If we do have questions,
Rick?
who should we direct them to?
Well, you can ask them right now, if you do.
I'm not-
Otherwise, we'll be back at the next meeting with this as well.
I just thought in interim.
Yeah, happy to take them all.
Neil?
If I can't answer them, I'll get you to whoever can.
Okay, thank
But there will be a chance for more questions at the next meeting too.
Right, thank you.
Okay, well then let's move on to our other item. F, consideration of resolution 24-6, or no, I'm sorry. Item G, consideration of resolution 24-6-2718, authorizing the issuance of an RFQ for construction management services for the Monona Civic Building. And this is also put forth by the Ad Hoc Public Safety Building Committee. So Neil, do you want to do a little intro of this?
Yep, absolutely. The key element we've discussed a couple times tonight is the contracting with a construction management firm. This will be the firm that, at least in the short term, will have two or three immediate roles. One will certainly be helping to develop a refined cost estimate for the building. So we actually have as real numbers as we can get at this point. The other key role that they will do would be if the project proceeds, would be coordinating bidding on the project and then actually overseeing the actual construction project. Will be two key roles that this firm would play. But the immediate need we have to get them on board is to really help develop formal cost estimates. So we actually have a working number, and then also to not only come up with a preliminary number, but then also to help us if we start moving blocks around and reallocating space, we actually have someone who can help us understand really what those cost impacts of making those edits would be. So that's our main reasoning for doing that. I can certainly turn it over to Matt and Paul if they have any other comments on that.
Yeah, very, very briefly, Council. What you have in front of you is just a qualifications request at this point. So as I noted in the prior meeting at an ad hoc, we don't have the financial layer yet. That we likely will get 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm guessing, submittals of qualifications. We will then narrow, we being the collective ad hoc team, will narrow that group down likely to 2 to 4 entities to bring in and do a formal interview with, and we will have those entities bring their financial proposals forward. So I just want to make sure that those either watching or you as council members don't think we're ignoring the financial impact. That's going to be a component of the evaluation. We just find it's a lot, we ask them for a lot of detail. It's kind of a waste of 10 or 12 companies' times to produce all this financial detail when we're only going to talk to 3 or 4. So you still get the competitive nature of them knowing they're competing, but we do it with a smaller group. We've found that we get better numbers that way. I think we make better decisions as a group. We balance qualifications with cost versus it just being cost. So wanted to make sure you understood that is not being ignored, even though it doesn't appear in this specific request that will be going out. And then Alderman Wood did catch a mistake. Thank you. It's July 9th, not June 9th in the ad for bids. And so I already made that change between meetings. So we should be good to go there. And just from a timing perspective, you do see the preliminary timeline included in the draft document. If approved this evening, we will get these out to the entities. There's been 10 or 11 that have expressed interest already. Just hearing about the project in the media and other places. We will send to them directly as early as tonight or tomorrow morning, and we will also be posting this in the Daily Reporter, which is the Wisconsin Construction Trade newspaper, and also providing it to the city if you would like to publish it in your official communications. So the goal is to be broad and open and invite everybody to participate and directly distribute to those that have expressed interest.
And I'm sorry, I had some notes written on top of the asterisk where it started from immediate approval, so I should have gone through that before why don't we do that, and then if we have more questions. So is there a motion to take this out of order? Because we obviously would like to get this out as soon as possible.
I'll move to take this out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, now we can go back to our questions. And my understanding, and this is hiring a construction management person is a pretty much standard operating process with this kind of a project, correct?
Yes. As projects are getting more and more expensive and more complex, if we were building a $5 million standalone small fire station on a farm field site, I maybe would disagree. Maybe we just draw it, design it, get it out to bid, and whoever's low is low. If you think about the complexity of what we're entering into here with potentially 36 months of phased construction in a building that still has to serve the community and your public safety teams at the same time, there is that added layer of complexity, and the scale and cost of this are much greater than $5 million. And so those two variables are typically where we see clients tip into getting a construction professional on board earlier in the process, not just for budgeting, which is a huge piece of it, but for constructability, and another set of professional opinions and eyes on a project, again, mainly because of the complexity and scale.
I do want to emphasize Matt's point about we will still be using and in this building if and when this project is going on. So making sure we can get trucks out where we need them, we can get staff in where we need them, we'll get the public in and out where we need them safely and into meetings and so forth. So that does present a unique challenge. You can imagine just in terms of our current layout, how that's going to work is beyond me right now. But we have heard some good ideas in terms of how that might work, in terms of who we might move first. So I know these guys have already started to think about that a little bit, but to actually have someone in there who's going to know about how they're going to be actually physically doing the construction process and site is going to be a big asset to understanding the feasibility of how that might work.
So any, Rick?
I'm just wondering how this is going to work with you, the city, and this third party. The third party, I guess, is going to be responsive to the city, but working side by side with you?
Yeah, we work in partnership, but under separate contracts. So we have no contractual connection to the construction manager. The construction manager has no contractual connection to us. We're both working on your behalf.
Right.
We may at times not agree. We may push back on each other, but that's the tension that does help you as the owner getting the professional advice and opinions of both entities, not just one entity.
And for a project this size, how likely would it be that any other municipality would also contract with a project manager?
I just hired a construction manager in the city of Port Washington for a $35 million public safety building a couple weeks ago. And again, as I said, it's becoming more and more common, especially post-COVID and the inflation we've seen in the industry. Other contributing factors, just there's been kind of a reduction in quality of workforce due to quantity of work available, due to lack of people going into the trades. There's a lot more pressure on long lead items. Construction manager will be able to say, and we know some of it because we're dealing with it every day. Right now, if you want a generator, you better order it today for 12 to 18 months from now. So those are some of the things that as a team we're going to bring forward to you and say, once the project is approved to proceed, pretty quickly we're going to say, we have to order a generator. You're going to say, we don't even know what the building looks like. And we're going to say, but if we want a generator, when the building opens, we have to order now. And so that's where the two of us are going to work on the city's behalf. But we have zero issue pushing on the construction manager if we think things don't look right from a budget perspective or a phasing perspective. Equally, they have no reason not to push on us if they think there are more economical ways to build the building. You get that creative tension of both parties advocating for you.
So if there is a difference, is the city the one who makes the call?
The city always is making the call, unless it comes down to something that is very specific to code, building code or safety. And I've never had a client who, when we say it doesn't meet code and here's why, they want to do it anyway, nor do they ever want to get involved with the safety on the construction site, right? You're going to be very hands-off on that. That's what you're trusting us and your construction manager to lead. Yes, you always have the final say in what you decide.
I would add to that, Alder, that if we actually get into that process, the construction manager will actually be directly overseeing subcontracts. So the other specialty of trades, they will all go through that construction manager. So staff and the city will have to still be dealing with, we'll be working with Bray directly, we'll be working with the construction manager directly, but we will not be the ones managing every single subcontractor that's going to be coming on site.
Good point.
Which staff thinks is a pretty good
But they'll
asset.
be reporting directly to you.
They will still be reporting to us as the city, yes.
So you'll see what's happening through reporting.
Absolutely.
We will be having bi-weekly meetings on site with city staff, our team, construction manager. Every payment application for payment that the construction manager submits comes to us first. We vet it, make sure it aligns with where we believe they are in terms of completion of the project. It then comes to the city for approval. So we take a step back in terms of being front and center with the city team once construction begins, but we're still on site regularly, making sure the project is built per plans and specifications, and we're watching out for you throughout that process as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I do
Brian?
have
Nancy, did you?
I did, thank you. I believe in relation to in this particular position, I remember being at the meeting, the committee meeting where I believe this position was discussed, and at that time there was discussion around, it seemed to me there was discussion around a potential redundancy in this position with Bray, and also who this person really reports to or is responsive to, and whether or not it was really needed. And so I'm wondering if you could just flesh that out a little bit more.
I think she's talking about the owner's representative.
Yeah, so we actually discussed three different options.
Yeah.
So obviously, we are on board now to be your architect and engineer, so assuming nothing goes awry, that won't be changing. We'll be at the table with you through completion. The discussion around construction manager and owner's representative were the two concepts that we talked about. And at this point, based, I believe, and I won't speak for ad hoc, but I think ad hoc was of the opinion that the higher priority is to get a construction manager on board, mainly because of their ability to get us more detailed cost estimates sooner. And we will revisit the conversation around whether the city also would like to bring on an owner's representative to be the city's advocate on a complex project. That would basically be at the table with us, but would become an extension of the city's leadership team throughout. So we haven't said, I don't believe, yes or no to an owner's rep yet. We've just said not now. We're going to revisit that. Is that fair? Those that have been in the room, as we advance the project.
I think the committee is kind of leaning towards the owner's rep. I think part of the discussion at that earlier meeting was Neil and I trying to get, and other people too, getting our heads just wrapped around the difference between owner's rep, construction manager, and some things you read makes them sound like the same position, and others are completely different, and I think we've all come to agreement on what's what here, so, yeah. Does that help, Nancy?
Yeah, it does. And just in relation to that, could you, I'm assuming that having a construction management firm or individual has a pretty well-defined ROI, which is to say that if you have somebody that is honing in on expenses in the best way up front, and then overseeing subs and overseeing the throughout the project, that if there wasn't a pretty strong ROI, that having somebody on board versus not having somebody on board, that the costs tend to run higher and things tend to be sloppier. And could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I wish I could give you an example of a project where we had a construction manager and also competitively bid the project to give you a direct comparison financially. You don't deliver projects that way, right? It's one or the other. What I would tell you is the services the construction manager is going to provide from the time construction begins until closeout of the project are generally the same as if you were competitively bidding the project. You're going to have a full-time on-site superintendent, you're going to have a project manager, they're going to hold all the contracts, et cetera, et cetera. You only find out who your partner is when you open the envelopes, and that partner could have never built a complex police and fire station before. They could have never built a project larger than $10 million. So the variable of who your partner is in terms of leading the project is really unknown. From a personnel, capability, scale, experience, geography, all of that, up and until drawings are done and we open bids. So that's one reason when we get to more complex, larger projects, owners are picking the construction management route, because you get to meet the people you're going to work with. This is a 3 to 4 year partnership with this company, so personnel matter. And you really don't have that control with the competitive bid process. So I can't give you a specific financial ROI, but I will tell you most clients are very happy when they go this route because they're selecting their partner versus their partner being selected for them by the low bid.
Got it. And then my last my last comment or question relates to, I certainly understand the complexity that Neil was just referencing around having the city having to operate at the same time that we're under construction on the same site. And I'm wondering if the committee or Bray or this construction manager would be thinking outside of the box a little bit in terms of expense-wise. You know, sometimes it makes a lot more sense to move out. Not that everybody could move out. I'm not saying that all, you know, all the departments that are currently in our current buildings could move out, but there is a glut of space in Monona right now, commercial space in Monona right now. Is it possible, I mean, will somebody be looking at whether it makes sense to potentially to move some of City Hall or some of the less technical departments to a different space, and would that save us any money, I guess is my point.
Great point. We did kind of at a very high level talk about that. I think you noted, I think you were hinting at police and fire are definitely more difficult to do that with than our admin team would be. We will continue to look at that. We've been really driving the plans forward with the goal of phasing so that if we want to stay on site or it's most economical to stay on site, we can, which is why if you look at the plans in a little more detail, you see we can build fire up on top of the hill while we remain operational on the bottom side of the hill with fire and PD coming and going. Once fire is completed, we can move them in, we can take the apparatus bays down and reconstruct. Will PD be a little bit displaced for a bit in terms of vehicle access? Yes. They don't really have much for garage space the way it is today anyway, unfortunately. So they'll probably, I'm guessing, they're gonna borrow a bay or two from fire during that timeline. And if fire has, we've already talked about temporarily having to put some of the pieces of equipment maybe they don't use as much over to DPW for a period of time. So some of that has begun, but we will have a really good phasing plan in place over the next 3 to 4 months, I would say, to share with this group as well.
And we have talked about the possibility of moving out some departments in the past. I know we had originally thought about Maywood being a potential for that. And I don't know if there's any empty space over there or how Jake's using that. I mean, we're not, obviously don't need to get into discussion of that tonight, but certainly of admin areas. Moving fire or something's a little different story, but it's looking like, since that would be the first thing you would be building most likely, that probably wouldn't need to happen.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's certainly something we've thought about.
I would think, Alder, obviously our first effort would be certainly to utilize any existing city-owned space that we can use. So library, senior center, anything we can move. If it's, like I said, just office staff, it's just put them on a cell phone, move them to a hotel station someplace, you know, get them set up. So, I mean, whatever we need to do on some of those things. Certainly we're going to take a look at that option as probably our first effort. But if there, you know, if there's going to be some effort, we're going to probably need some counter service for certain departments. So how we accommodate that would be kind of really the more immediate challenge. Just the office folks can do their job with their laptop and their phone no matter where they're at. But if it's folks taking payments, it's folks physically issuing their permits, those kinds of things, we're going to need to be very cognizant of how the counter service will work. So going forward, so.
Totally understand all of those things. I just wanted to make sure that was being discussed or considered in this whole thing, because working around what's there, as we just pointed out, is going to be a challenge.
Absolutely.
That is true. Agreed. Anything else, Rick?
With the construction manager, I'm wondering, I'm not asking for an exact figure, but in terms of how to figure out what the cost might be, is it going to be based on low bid, or is there like tied to the cost of construction, or how does that get priced?
Great question. So we will ask them for, as I mentioned before, a lot of information regarding fee. We're going to ask them for a percentage fee. So that would be the fee that is applied to the actual construction cost. So to your point, yes, it would be a percentage variable. Ask for their cost of the payment and performance bond, which they will have to issue. Often they're going to have a cost for insurance. We're going to ask them for a cost of this first phase of conceptual budgeting and estimating. We're going to ask them for a fixed fee associated with what we call pre-construction. So post-council saying go and before construction starts, during the detailed design and engineering phase, they may have a cost. We're gonna ask for that cost. And then the one that they don't enjoy the most, but is most important, is the monthly cost associated with them being on site. How much does it cost per month for them to staff the project with an on-site superintendent, with project management staff, with quality control staff? They always hate that because there's so many variables that goes into it. But that will become the basis by which we then negotiate those costs moving forward. It will be a bit of a moving target. If the construction duration gets longer or shorter, we should see either added costs or savings. But we do want to at least know that we've got a baseline understanding of how they're calculating their fees, so that when the first budget comes in and suddenly it's $500,000 more than they had in their proposal, we can say, well, back up a step here. What happened? Maybe there's a legitimate reason, maybe there isn't, but we at least have that baseline upon which we will all collectively continue negotiating with them throughout the development of the project.
So, just so I understand, we could sign a contract with them, but the amount of money it might cost might vary within the term of the contract?
Yeah, so the contract will have a general definition of how you will compensate them, not how much you will compensate them. And then there's what's called a guaranteed maximum price amendment that comes along. I wish it wasn't called that because there's no such thing as a guaranteed maximum price. But that is the technical American Institute of Architects language they use. And there will be an amendment to that contract issued once all the bids are received and we do know the true initial cost of the project. That will be where you kind of define more directly the actual cost.
Do you have experience on ballparks on what something of this magnitude could cost?
If they submit proposals that don't align with what we have historically seen, yes, we'll be able to tell you this doesn't look like it aligns. I haven't done a detailed general conditions analysis yet based on this project, so I wouldn't want to venture a guess.
But it will probably be a percentage of the construction cost plus other items.
It's probably, if I had to guess, it's going to be 2 to 3, maybe even 4 fixed fees to get us from where we are today to construction starting. And then once construction begins, it will be 2 or 3 different percentages applied: insurance, technology, overhead and profit, payment and performance bond, and then a series of monthly costs as well.
Okay.
So it's relatively complex. I will tell you that right out of the gate. That spreadsheet is a lot of numbers, and it's one of the reasons we want to wait on that, to not put 10 or 11 people through that effort unnecessarily.
Right. Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, if there's nothing else, then all in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor. We will get this out tonight or tomorrow, and Mayor Neal, once we do, we will copy you on it so you have it.
Great, great.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Safe travels home.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And to
Good
Des
job.
Moines.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to move back up to item 2E, consideration of resolution 24-6-2419, amending the city purchasing policy put forth by the Finance and Personnel Committee, which approved this earlier this evening. This is something, I guess we've done it at least once since I was on the council, I know. Periodically look at the numbers in terms of what different department heads and Neil are able to approve without bringing it to council, that kind of thing. So, Neil, if you want to go into a little explanation of it.
Yep, absolutely, Mayor, thank you. And obviously, this came up, I can't remember exactly which piece of equipment it was, Alder, if we started talking about, or maybe it was something with the Parks Department. I can't remember exactly what the actual piece of equipment was that caused us to bring this up. But we did, based on that initial conversation I did sit down with Director Haudecker and Leah and Administrative Services Director, Ms. Kimmel. We worked at specifically, where do we think those levels were? Those current levels were, the initial ones are $2,500 for department head approval. With it was also $25,000 for my ability to sign off. Anything above that would have to come to Finance Committee and or Council for approval. I think the initial comment when we first mentioned it at this meeting was, obviously with inflation and other things going on, maybe there was a a higher number we should be taking a look at. I think Alderwood threw out 50 to 75. I think was a range that was at least talked about, something to analyze and take a look at. We did meet as a staff group to talk about that and thought, well, we appreciated the faith in staff at the 75,000 level. We felt, I think as a consensus, we thought 50,000 was maybe a little bit more appropriate number for my level of approval. We did think so that would go from 25 to 50,000. The individual department head was going from 2,500 to 7,500. Then again, these are for already approved budgeted costs, to be clear. So these are not anything new. If there's a budget amendment, they still have to come back for those procedures here still with council to approve those items. So these are specifically for budgeted items. The compromise that Director Haudecker did come up with for items above between $50,000 and $100,000 that were approved items, so we could at least put those perhaps in discussion with the mayor when we're finalizing the agenda. We could look at putting those items on a consent agenda. That way it was on there for a quick approval if there was everything was comfortable with it, but if it still wishes to be pulled, that it was still listed on the agenda as an individual item, that it could still be pulled for discussion. So we felt that was kind of a happy medium for going for a little bit higher items on that, so still having the ability for this body to pull items if they wish to do so, but then allowed us to proceed on a little bit higher, a little bit more efficient level. The only time that really comes into a play, normally we don't have that many items, but certainly at the end of the year, when we've actually approved a budget, or we get first into January and departments are looking to go ahead and proceed and start ordering all the things that we've just approved in the budget within the last 30 days, that could be a pretty good list of items. So in that case, if those items are coming up on a consent agenda, there could be multiple
Something
items
like
there.
this cot that we just approved for the ambulance, that wouldn't have had to come here. And it was already approved as part of the capital budget process and the final budget, so yeah.
Yeah, or we would have had it, I think, yeah, that would have qualified as an item for the consent
Right,
agenda on our discussion. And again, that would be done not solely at staff level, but when we're setting the agenda, Mayor, we'd be taking a look at that item. We would certainly, staff would recommend if we think something is good enough, it's unanimously approved, there's no financial considerations or concerns in that particular department with that expenditure, we would recommend it for that. If we do have the ability even for us to take a look and be like, well, something didn't quite go well capital-wise in that project, we might need to hold some of that money back, we might want to hold back on that, we can certainly identify that and share that with council as we go ahead on those items too. So we are looking at some other items in that purchasing policy to bring forward some additional controls and some additional items that we are going to be working at, but we wanted to go ahead and move this one forward for your consideration at this time. So this one it is not starred. We just wanted to make sure and present it for this evening for first review. So,
Any questions?
I do.
Nancy?
Yeah, so, to clarify, Neil, what you're saying is that with this policy, aside from the $7,500, $50,000 marks, if it was something that was budgeted and what is being purchased is within what was budgeted, like tonight, then you would go ahead at the administrative level, at the staff level. If it was something, as an example, like Public Works, where Dan's got something on the plate, and I know that his are typically more than 50,000, but let's just assume for a minute, he's got something on the plate, and in order to piece something together, he's having to move monies from one project or one piece to another piece, or leftover money from a fund balance on something from a previous project. So if it's something like that where we're moving dollars around, it would still come to council, but if it's something that's really straightforward, it would stay at staff. Is that what you're saying?
that's correct, Alder. Our concern is making sure that if it stays within its originally approved budget and doesn't negatively impact any other services or projects, then it would be a staff level approval. But if there was a shifting money from one project to another, that essentially for me that counts as a budget amendment, and we would want to bring that forward to this body.
I think this is one of a couple different things we're considering bringing to council just to make things work a little bit more efficiently. There's always, not always, but there's often items that just automatically everyone approves anyway, but we just go through this process of bringing it to the council, and I think there's certain things that could just be handled by staff and not have to go through council. And so we're just kind of taking a closer look at some of those. This is the first step to make things a little more efficient for staff and for the council. Doug?
Yeah, and basically all we're doing is just raising the amount.
Right.
Like the policy already exists, just increasing it from 25 to 50. It is Mark's language, the 50 to 100,000 would be new. But otherwise, I think this is the third or fourth time that it's been updated.
I know we've done it at least once since I've been involved.
And certainly from, just as your administrator, if there was for some reason, even if it was a $10,000 item, if something didn't quite seem like it was consistent with what the council's approval of the budget would be, we'd certainly make that discretion, bring that forward to the mayor and probably say, we probably still should bring this forward to council. So, I mean, we're still going to be having that review, I think, on an agenda by agenda status to take a look at those things.
For Brian?
So I see in the resolution language talking about CPI and keeping up with CPI. If I look, like, the compounded rate of CPI is only about 35%. We're looking at significant change in comparison. This isn't just keeping up with CPI.
Over a certain amount of time, Alder, I would say actually it's fairly consistent from when the last change was to when this one is. I think it's closer than you think. So in terms of the overtime, again, we also did take, that was one aspect we took a look at, was certainly CPI, but we also wanted to certainly consider what is the standard level. We did take a look at what departments are purchasing on a regular basis and kind of felt that those were there. I mean, departments were pushing, they were thrilled with Alderwood's initial suggestion of 75,000 because the majority of our vehicles would fall underneath that. And we kind of thought, well, that's a big enough capital item. I don't know if we're quite ready to jump on that one and be able to purchase every single vehicle just at this administrative level. So that's kind of why we, in that case, we certainly, from our little staff group who met on this, dropped that down. We felt we were more comfortable with 50. So we did try to find the right balance in terms of what we think is a regular purchase for departments on a monthly basis versus larger capital items, which we still feel that need that extra level of review.
Yeah, and I would agree with the statement that there are lots of things that we end up with that are like the striker tonight, which there's no additional conversation. And I'd also just have a kind of caution for a second and think through. We, for example, this group is the same group that approved the budget.
Right.
But that's not always true. And there's
Absolutely.
a possibility in the future
Absolutely.
that the 6 people and mayor that pass a budget might be only 3 people and a new mayor when it comes to purchasing something that was approved. So there is the possibility of less people approving a purchase, and that just had me thinking when it shifted from the 25 to the 50. I think the other dollar amount, I think, makes some sense, and I'm not necessarily suggesting that we change that. It's just had me kind of thinking through this of we've had a very strong committee or council and leadership through our mayor and administrator for a number of years, in my opinion, and I think it's gone quite smoothly in the sense of the budgeting process and then getting to purchasing, and much of the conversations are like, oh yeah, we already had that discussion, we approved it, it makes sense. I'm not sure that's always going to be the case, and so I'm just cautiously approaching this.
An excellent point, Alder, and obviously, it's certainly, at some point, this body can always adjust those numbers down again. If you felt that was absolutely, that would certainly be within the purview of this body to do that, absolutely.
Yeah, I would think, especially if a council is getting involved at that level, and that concern, that they would propose to knock it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is a great point, Brian. That's really, thank you. I also wonder, though, isn't some of this just based in the sheer reality that things cost more.
Yeah.
And eventually, you just have to allow the
Just have to be
administrator
caught up,
to
kind of.
approve a little bit more. It's just the way things go. Yeah.
And I would add to Alder Holmquist's statement that I would say that even be part of my responsibility, that if I kind of saw those winds changing a little bit, that I would even suggest that we take a look at that policy. So.
I would also just add that I think it's not a matter, I think Brian's point is a good one, but I would also say that, at least for me, having comfort relates to also having confidence in the leadership at the staff level that we have, department heads, and I mean, we've been really lucky in terms of our senior staff to have, you know, a very seasoned crew, experienced crew, and also at the administrative level, and that's not necessarily always going to be the case either. Which again doesn't mean that we shouldn't do this, but but I also think that you know, I can think back to a few city administrators ago that I wouldn't necessarily feel as confident letting them sign off.
I'll take that as a compliment, Alder Thanks.
But I think it goes back to the fact that it's in an approved budget.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's still,
Yeah.
you know, even if you, yeah, so that, if they're, whoever they are and however competent they are, if they're buying the thing that we said they could buy, if
Right.
it's for less than what we said they could buy it for, then why do we need to come back and do it again?
And I will say that, and to build on Alder Moore's comment, Director Houdeker would definitely let us know if there was a revenue issue on something.
Right,
If for
right.
some reason we did not have, but something changed budget-wise that no longer made that, the context of that original budget approval was suddenly different, we would certainly bring that forward as a staff for your consideration, so.
Right.
The other thing I was gonna add to that is, it has been, it looks like about, like Brian said, about 35% interest, or inflation, rather, since 2012, 2013 to today. And that's about the 2013, I think, is the last time this got amended. But, you know, so when will it happen again? Will it be 11 years again before it gets revisited? And so I think we want to shoot, because we're probably not going to revisit it right away.
True.
I mean, we could put in an escalator clause, but then that just, it's, I think, better just to have, here's the number. We don't have to start calculating inflation into it and come up with odd numbers, so, yeah. So I think it's okay that it's overshooting inflation for now, because it'll catch up.
Anyone else? And this will come back next time, so.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to reports. Any updates or discussion on diversity issues? Doug?
I would just say that I think the Harry Whitehorse International Wood Sculpture Festival has been a huge, you know, one of our biggest, I don't want to say it's not a city initiative, but something happening in the community that's very significant with the original inhabitants. And I think it's been a really positive.
Yeah.
And anybody who hasn't been there, I would encourage you to go up there.
I'll add to that. At the opening ceremonies, there were between 500 and 600 people, you know, by estimations, and some absolutely spectacular, you know, ho-chunk dancing and presentations, and just beautiful, a beautiful sight. It is a perfect location for this sort of event. that property is known to be a very popular historical summer location for the Ho-Chunk people, a place where they would camp. It's just it's really coming together very well. And to echo Alderwood's sentiment, if you haven't been there, just go. It's, running through Saturday. The closing ceremonies are on Saturday at 5 p.m., where the finished artwork will be on display, and just come and see that, if nothing else. But if it doesn't fit into your schedule, just drive anytime. It's a public park.
Right.
You're free to go at any time. We have security on site all the time. You can drive up at any hour of the day and just walk around and look at the sculptures. They're absolutely beautiful.
If you're there at a time when there isn't parking.
Sure.
There's a shuttle from the high school that
Right.
works constantly going back and forth. And
Yeah, there's special needs parking on site, and everyone else at the high school. Yeah.
And I'd like to thank Alder Moore and Alder Rademacher, who have both
Yeah.
been very involved in the planning, along with a lot of other people too, but it's
Yeah.
really quite an undertaking.
Yeah, more so Alder Moore,
Yeah.
for sure. She's been
It's
there from the very
planning
beginning.
For a year and a half to 2
Yeah,
years. It's
exactly.
Very impressive. And all kinds of, the comments from people, I worked there today and I was there on Friday and a little bit on Sunday, and yeah, the comments are really
Yeah.
super positive, and people from all over the place
Yeah.
here looking at it, so, yeah.
Just if the heat would cooperate, it would be even better.
Yeah.
It's a little hot out there.
So any other DEI, any sustainability updates?
I'll just say it now. I was going to leave it to committee updates, but June 29th, so what is that? Not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday. Once again, the Sustainability Committee is having their electronics recycling event. So Saturday, June 29th, at the Monona Grove School District office parking lot on the corner of Monona and Nichols there, from 8 in the morning until 12 noon. Bring in all your electronics and small appliances. It's always a very popular event. Instead of having it every year, we've just sort of gone to an every other year schedule. Information is on the website, newsletters. Make sure to come and check it out. It'd be great.
I know, we're already collecting.
Me too. Got my little box of junk. Yeah.
Anyone else? Rick?
Eco Tuesday this month will be taking a tour of Pellettieri's sorting facility. So
That'd be interesting.
pre-register for that.
I think that's next Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to add one more thing. The Harriet Whitehorse event is being run as a low-waste event. I'm really proud of the organizers for embracing that. So if you do happen to go, it's kind of cool. You're not going to find any, free-range recycling and garbage cans scattered throughout the acres of property, but instead there are just 2 locations where you can go with whatever you have in your hand, whether it be a pop bottle or a tray of something that you've purchased from the food carts, and you'll be greeted by a volunteer who will help you to find a place for your waste, perhaps composting or recycling or taking it to the landfill. But it's fun to see how little waste we've produced. It's really kind of cool to see that in action.
All right, well, let's move on to committees. Brian?
No report.
Alder Moore?
Yeah, 2 things, as was obviously referenced earlier this evening. We have an executive storage building, I think I mentioned it the last time, that was approved by Plan Commission, going in north of Meriter. And as was referenced also earlier this evening, the development that was proposed and approved now several years ago at the bowling alley site, is now back in front of the Plan Commission. And revised, definitely revised from where we were before. So we're starting back with the general development plan and the PIP, but initial pre-hearing reactions were positive, and we're pleased to see that that's moving ahead again, and that the Slendy Development was able to find a contractor, and we were able to come to the meeting of the minds in terms of what's appropriate for that site and what's affordable given the current construction rates and construction costs. So that's looking promising, although we're certainly just in the beginning stages of a redo on that. I'm sure, especially those people that we're hearing louder and louder from over the potholes at the bowling alley. We'll be grateful when something happens there. And third, and definitely not last, on the last Plan Commission meeting in June 10th, we had a pre-hearing of what would effectively be a real game changer, as Chris Homburg said in the meeting, for the city of Monona, and that is the Topgolf Corporation building the very first Topgolf in Wisconsin, in Monona, something that they've been looking at for 5 or 6 years. And so we had a pre-hearing on that proposal, and I mention it in part because there was a terrific presentation by the principal of Topgolf that is obviously available via the YouTube, community media YouTube, for people to watch. Topgolf has over 100 facilities on a worldwide basis. It's owned by Callaway, and it's a kind of entertainment facility that I think would serve as a terrific anchor, and that would be located in what is now the west side of the WPS property, because WPS is shrinking its footprint. So I'd encourage people to take a look at that. Again, we're just in the pre-hearing phase, but I think overall it was a good review, and it was a great presentation by the principals of Topgolf. So I did just encourage our public to, and fellow alders, to pay attention to that. Last but definitely not least, as I would be remiss if I didn't say anything about the Harry Whitehorse Festival, because I have been involved for the last year and a half. And really what I want to say more than anything is just alert people to not only stopping by, but upcoming events. Tomorrow night we have a beer garden there with the Cashbox Kings starting at 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And so that's a terrific time to come and see the sculptures, and otherwise it will be a traditional beer garden, terrific entertainment. On Friday night, in addition to the sculptures, after Friday during the day, and then Friday night until 8 p.m., which is to say after the sculptures finish their work for the day, we'll have the first ever Make Music Monona on site, where for those of you that are probably familiar with Make Music Madison, we're just teaming up with that, and several of the sculptors themselves will be performing. Part of that, they're musicians, and they brought their instruments, and they're part of the performance lineup. So that's going to be a terrific Friday night. And then Saturday, the closing ceremonies that Alder Rademacher mentioned will be terrific in and of themselves. To join us at 5 p.m. Where the public will be able to see all the finished sculptures and learn more about those sculptures and what was created. And just as important, we are doing an all-community pot after the closing ceremonies. So bring a dish and bring yourself. And we'll be having an all-community potluck after the closing ceremonies.
And bring plates and silverware.
Yes.
We're actually we will be having quite a bit of that. I also would be remiss if I didn't shout out our, once again, incredible city staff and departments as it relates to the Harry White Horse Festival. Specifically, I want to shout out Parks and Rec, our fire department, our police department, and WVMO, who have been with us every step of the way in terms of supporting the event and providing the kinds of support that we needed. And there's been many Monona businesses, and our Monona Eastside Business Association have been very involved and generous with their time and support for the event as well. So I just wanted to give shouts out to all of those folks as well.
Thank you. Alder Wood.
No report.
Alder Rademacher.
I already mentioned the e-cycling from the Sustainability Committee. Landmarks is meeting this week. Tourism's been plugging along really well. Alder Moore, do you mind if I speak to transit, or would you like to cover that? I was going to read some highlights from our last meeting.
Sure, if you want, go ahead.
Sure. I just, in our last transit meeting, I just wanted to defer to Alder Morris. She's the chair, and I'm co-chair of that committee. But we welcomed some representatives from Madison Metro who talked about their marketing and rollout plan. And I think every one of us in the room was very impressed. The list just kept coming, and the ideas kept coming. And with zero additional cost to Monona. Everything is included. I mean, it was amazing. Just the types of text and email alerts and printed flyers and press releases, and people who would be coming to train folks on like how to ride the bus, like actually like outreach experts that come into your community and train you how to do this. We learned about smart cards that you load up and you just do it all online, or you can go to any quick trip and get a smart card. But by the time the bus rolls out in Monona, you can just walk in and take your credit card and tap it right on the bus. You don't even have to get a smart card if you don't want to. There's even something I wasn't aware of was they have a policy of fare capping. So for example, in one day, no matter how many times you get on and off the bus, no matter how many miles you travel, you will never pay more than $5. In 1 week, no more than 17. In 1 month, no more than 30. Unlimited miles. It's just talked about employer programs where a lot of employers might, work with their employees to, load up their smart cards or, have certain programs for discounts from Metro. It was just very reassuring. I think we're getting something very wonderful. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Alder Bernstein.
I was going to talk about sustainability, but
Go
should
for
I
it.
defer to you?
No, go for it.
I'll just say first, we have a library board meeting tomorrow, and Senior Citizens Committee will be my first on the 19th. With sustainability, I met this gentleman who was planting trees at Winnequa School, and it turns out he's planted about 5 trees. And we had a long talk. He was thinking about approaching sustainability, so he knew my name. And
but
so,
as it turned out,
but
as it turned out, we were already talking about that.
yeah, so
it was funny, the
so
coincidence.
we were talking about tree planting, and so bringing this group in, sort of like we did with the Bee and Butterfly Brigade. We're kind of
Was he a school district employee or?
no,
Just a citizen.
he lives on Roygan, and he just loves trees. And they raised some money, and they got the school district to agree.
Oh.
And so he was watering a new disease-resistant elm right at the entry, and they planted a bunch of trees around the play yard further past the garden. So we've talked more as a sustainability committee as trying to wrap them into our process about possibly doing some kind of tree planting project initiative?
I didn't want to jinx it and
Oh.
speak, before all the, before the ink was dried, as they say
Right.
on the contract.
Who
But it
knows?
could be very interesting. We spoke with, Director Anderson of Parks and, this concept that the city can buy in bulk, these, hundreds of, these trees, and how can we help residents to purchase trees, and using volunteers, how can we help residents understand how to plant trees, how to assess their site, and just to increase the urban canopy and all the benefits that can bring. So that's kind of one of the things that we're talking about right now.
But there's kind of a grassroots,
Yep.
no pun intended, group who's interested in doing tree planting, and we just might bring some more people into the process.
Kind of cool.
So
Have you
that's
been
kind of
talking with Jeff Johnson and Public
Yep,
Works?
yep.
Okay.
I forgot to mention Jeff and Jake. Yep, yep.
So we're not quite sure what form this will take, but we know there's interest, and we've known, like, the Bee and Butterfly Brigade has done some tremendous work now, past couple of years with the library garden there. I did sit in on the Bureau of Review, their last meeting. I have to tell you, it was a real education.
Oh, the people appealing their assessments?
Yeah.
Board of Review?
It boiled down to 3 individuals from a list that I think started as 17 names.
Yeah.
The 3 that spoke were all lakefront property owners. None of their challenges were passed by the board. One gentleman, who I think is a neighbor of Nancy's, was considered waterfront, not lakefront. They're right at the end of that little access point next to Schluter Beach. And his assessment went up quite a bit, and even though there hadn't been much work on it, he was saying it's going to cost him a lot of money. And I think of the 2 of the 3 said that they may need to sell their house because the increase in property tax might price them out of their home. So it's a real issue, and I don't know what we can do about it. I have to say, I thought the assessor had really good grasp of all the facts and figures, so she was able to defend their assessment. So I came away feeling there was some real professionalism there. The one thing I did mention to her, she was using Squaw Circle as the name of the street, and I told her we had changed the name on that. And so I think she'll probably have to update her records on that. But I talked to the chair, who has been doing this for 20 years, but I think he's stepping down.
Yeah, this is last year, I think.
Robert Larson, who's a retired attorney, I believe, did a great job. I thought everyone did a great job. So it was an education for me to see their work. So that's my report.
All right. Aline?
No report.
Neil?
Just a quick update on short-term rentals. Mary and I had talked about taking a quick look at this. So this is kind of our initial kind of stance of where we are at as of today. So we ran a review of advertising units today. There's 30, very specific, 37 unique active short-term rentals is the term that we need to use. So it's actually down a little bit. It has actually decreased since we first started taking a look at this. We know of at least one unit that went to more of a full-time rental. We think 1 or 2 of them may have stopped listing it, not knowing why. Could maybe related to the requirements or not, we don't know. But out of those 37, there are currently 8 active listings that we do not have an application for. So as of July 1, we will be starting enforcement, as right now is the plan, which is going to be issuing a citation. We have had a lot of time in terms of getting this through, so kind of this is, having this last, hopefully, effort of getting this. We suspect a couple of them will come in still here before this is all done. A couple of them may not be active, even they may end June 30th and they may disappear off the list. So we'll have to see exactly. On July 1 will be the next time we run the full list. But in terms of breaking down the applications that we have, 19 are fully complete and kind of gone through both Aline and Doug's review in terms of looking at those. Part of those complete ones, there are 3 that are pending a new public health permit I put an asterisk on that because a lot of those permits technically end June 30th, but a lot of those folks are already applying for the next one. They're already familiar with this process. They're already moving forward on that. So really not anticipating that being too much of an issue. 8 of those are complete applications and not requesting any exception. 7 of them were incomplete. We're following up, trying to get more information, and there's 3 of those we still are waiting for payment on. So just kind of showing that out there. Out of the 14 applications that have requested exceptions, the math doesn't quite fully add up here because they can request more than one of those exceptions. So just to comment on that. So out of the 180-day limit, there are 7 asking to go beyond the 180 days. 2 of them, very interesting, just want to go up to the 180 days because they're a non-resident. They just want to have that 6 month. If they're okay with that number, they can go up to that. There's 7 of them asking to go this relief from the 7-day limit, and then 3 of them beyond the 30-day limit, was essentially tied into being able to go up to like the 180 days. 2 of them said they requested an exception to the ordinance, but didn't specify what part of the ordinance. So they just want the whole thing. So we still have some follow up. We obviously still need to do with those. So that's kind of just from a statistical standpoint where we are at. Just a quick summary here. Enforcement will begin July 1st for folks who have them. We did meet this morning with building inspection and fire to kind of finalize our inspection checklist. We'll be turning them loose essentially the week of the 24th. Chief McMullen said he's actually going to take on the first round of inspections himself. He's going to do those because he just wants to kind of make sure that he's laid out a process for his staff and that he's understanding on that. I may if he's willing to let me ride shotgun on that, I may go with him on a couple of those just to see how those are all going. Public Health Madison-Dade County is backlogged on inspection requests, so some of the approvals we're making are, as long as they provide us evidence that they've applied and that they've been in good standing, we're going to be going and conditionally approving some of those requests, and then they just have to show us that permit data when they receive it. One thing we're kind of working on, we've had a couple of applications that have popped up that either as part of their application or as part of some of the follow-up that we've noticed, there is actually a zoning violation related to the residents and related to in terms of ingress or egress, specifically like a duplex that may be operating in a single family neighborhood, which is currently against our ordinance. So we're trying to figure out exactly what approach we need to take with that in terms of getting that corrected. So that'll be a conversation we'll be having probably with Attorney Cole to kind of look and see exactly what. So we think we will, especially once we start doing inspections, we may find more of that going on when we're actually out on the ground taking a look at some of those things. The language in terms of the current ordinance, certainly economic feasibility is essentially the reasoning for any exception request. It is very clearly identified in the ordinance, saying that's the reason that you can ask for it. We have varying levels of detail based on our exception requests. Some folks have been really great and probably provided us too much information. Their mortgage information, their any improvement costs they've made done really, really well. Other folks have simply provided a statement saying that this will be economically infeasible for me to continue to operate if we meet these. So probably going forward, after this round of getting things approved, we're going to probably look at kind of tightening up those policy levels a little bit, working with Attorney Cole to figure out exactly what those are, because consistency is probably one of the main reasons folks get sued under these types of ordinances. If we are approving some and not others without a real sound policy basis, we need to make sure we're being consistent with that. So as you can imagine, there has been significant staff time spent with several of the applicants on understanding the ordinance and the application process itself. Not all of them. Some of them have been provided everything. Like I said, those 8 that we have there, they provided everything. They didn't call and ask any questions. They paid everything went through just fine. Some folks, however, have taken a lot more hand-holding for a variety of reasons. So hopefully that's maybe more of a first time effort of getting this launched, and some of that gets a little better after we've kind of gotten through and we kind of hit our stride on these a little bit. But there has been, both especially I would say for Arlene and for Doug especially, me to some extent, but certainly those two in terms of their initial review of all these applications. The follow-up with some of these folks is really what's taken a lot of time. And just wanted to make a note, because I think we've talked about this in terms of enforcement as we go forward with this ordinance and any other ordinances. It's going to be based on confirmed violations. not just complaints. We have had examples of complaints that may or may not be accurate for a variety of reasons. So just make sure as we go forward and we're documenting these things, reviewing them, we're going to be making sure and verifying that if we get a complaint, we're going to follow up on it, but we're going to make sure that there was an actual violation that has occurred. So that's really just as a clarification, because somebody might say, well, geez, they've had 24 complaints on it. I'm like, well, somebody find out maybe just upset with their neighbor. And so we want to make sure that if there's been a complaint filed, that we're following up to actually verify that there has been a violation of either the short-term rental ordinance or any of our other noise, our noise ordinances, our zoning ordinances, any of those other types of issues. So.
And I would just reiterate, staff have spent a ton of time on this. Really, I'm hopeful that now that we've been through the process once, that ongoing, a lot of these will just be renewals, and hopefully it's a fairly cut and dry process, but it has been a lot of staff
So
time.
I will send out that info sheet to everyone. I'll email that so everybody has that. As this is a report, when I know city attorney's not here, but if you have questions on that, please shoot me an email, let me know. Be happy to answer them or look into any questions you may have on that data. So.
Okay.
And that's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. And I just had a couple of, maybe even one thing left. We have been meeting with, we met last week with Miller, the communications firm we've been working with on this survey, Community Perceptions, or whoever the company is who did it. But we are on a very tight timeline in terms of this referendum question. We have to have it approved a certain number of days before the referendum, and so we have to approve it at our second August meeting. There's no room for error there, and we would like to have a first read, obviously, at the first meeting. So what's happening with the survey results are all due by July 3rd. It's going to take them some time to analyze it because some of them are coming in on paper, a lot are coming in online. But we're hoping to have a pretty good idea of them like the third week of July. So what we have decided to do is schedule a special council meeting on July 25th, which is it a Thursday, I think?
Check that here.
You have to double check. At 6 o'clock to go over the results. Community Perceptions will be here to discuss them with us. And then so that we get some guidance from the council on which of the options we want to include in a referendum question, because it's not going to be a choice of a couple different options. It will be yes or no on one option is what we're thinking. So, but we would like input of the council obviously before that. So even before we get to the meeting where it's there for first read, we want to be able to go in depth with you about the results of the survey and get some agreement on what the questions should be. So.
I think response so far has been very positive. We have gotten a lot of, in terms of actual response rate, so we've been actually doing very well.
Wonderful.
So I think online in the first week, I think we had over 250.
Yeah.
In fact, it got
morning
through
was 264, I think.
a note. I did get a somewhat panicked text from the mayor last Sunday already, or a week ago. They made it through the surveys made it through the mail faster than we anticipated, which is a good problem. But we actually had to get the website up and running. People were like, so it says to go to the website. There's nothing on there. Oh, jeez. Yeah. So we got that information posted. We had it ready to go. We just didn't anticipate it getting through the mail quite so fast. So, but since then we have it's one per household. You have to contact the city if you would like to request a second one. If you have multiple adults in your household who would like to respond, folks have been super great. Everybody who's talked about it has been very positive and appreciative that we're taking the time to present the information and ask the questions. So.
And I've had several good comments on the background information we have posted on the website. Is very detailed, and so obviously if anybody has questions, they should call Neil or I, and we'll try to answer them. But we tried to cover everything in that document. So
The mailer looked great. I really did. Well done.
Thank you.
It laid it out very clear, and it was great.
Yeah, I think it definitely was worth hiring Miller to help put all that together. They did a nice job.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Related to that, I haven't honestly looked in detail on the website, and maybe it's on the website, but you probably FAQs or whatever you have there, but I'm just wondering if it's possible, I mean, I am reading some things on social media and other resident comments, which totally understandably makes me realize that, you know, residents don't fully understand our budgeting process or our budget or whatever, and nor do I expect everybody to understand that, but I was thinking about doing something like writing a letter to the editor, or maybe doing some other things around the kind of planning that we have done. But I'm cognizant of sort of the separation around the referendum. So in terms of what we can do and what we can't do. So I'm asking, is something like a letter to the editor or on social media?
I'd say,
Okay.
Alder, I'd say, you know what, give me a ring, let's talk about that, because I think there's definitely an opportunity for that. Let's just find the right spot and message to put on that. We'd be happy to talk about that, so.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I don't have anything else, just be sure you put that on your calendar. And then we have 5 appointments tonight. Jesse Passon to the zoning board, which we've had an opening there for over a year, which is great. Mary Anderson and Joe Sweeney are actually reappointments to the library board. They've been on, Mary's been on a couple terms now. Ashley Grice, Landmarks, again, somewhere we've been looking for, so we still have an opening there if anyone out there is interested. And Ginger Jacobson Ruffner to Park and Recreation. So is there a motion to approve those?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Well,